Hey everyone, Georgie here with Ukraine Matters. We have plenty of topics to talk about, but I'm going to start with a couple of things that are happening on the front line just to kind of cover the changes. The first thing is that a lot of you worried about what's going to happen in certain directions like Avdiivka and Robotyne. And what you need to know that why I'm also so calm is that the situation is very fluid. Last time I reported to you that Russians were attacking and pushing from the south towards Robotyne. Well, just recently we got confirmation that Ukrainians are actually already regrouped and counterattacked have since then retaking certain positions that were lost and actually pushing Russians a little bit more to the south. That's why this is the nature of the positional warfare, that sometimes we might see certain groups fall back, then the other time the positions might be recaptured. And this is also true in the same in Avdiivka. So when we saw that around Avdiivka there is this somewhat nasty wedge that Russians started making, well, the truth is it's not completely clear what you can see. So what we had on deep state map is we had this kind of pimple that was located here, and that was, again, the map were just slowly updating. The actual truth were that Russians made it towards this part of Avdiivka and were able to kind of get in certain positions that Ukrainians controlled. But then if we look at it, for example, now, then we see that this situation doesn't look as terrifying. I mean, if this can even be considered terrifying, because it's literally a couple hundred of meters. But so you might notice that the situation kind of looks very weird, and it's because Ukrainians have counterattacked, and now Russians are complaining that Ukrainians are kind of closing in on them, and the groups that are located in this area might actually get encircled. Now, they might not get encircled, they might push back. The principle still stands. Again, I don't know whether or not Avdiivka will hold. It might fall. This is dependent on resources. Everything that is happening on the battlefield is depending on resources, because this is the war of resources. I'm going to talk more about this, but for right now, for all of the things that Russia is trying to achieve, we need to understand that Russia is overusing its resource. They're trying to throw as much as they can, and they're exploiting the fact that Ukraine just doesn't have the same supply that it had during the summer. Right now, Ukraine is in economy mode. That's why Russians are able to advance. And again, advance is a very, very loud statement, knowing just how much they have lost. Let's be very clear. If they take Avdiivka today, like Ukrainians just go out, it's already too much. It was already too expensive. You cannot deplete so many resources for every Avdiivka. You're gonna run out. And this is what we're seeing. Russians continuously run out. But at the current tempo, when they're attacking a couple of directions, they still can continue this kind of warfare for approximately a year, but it's obviously not good for them. But going into the other news, let's talk about something that I speak quite a lot, which is shitty journalism. So you might have heard that Ukrainians have taken out a Russian transport plane, and right now I will not make any claims because I hear conflicting stories. Apparently, there are videos from the plane crash, and there are no bodies on the videos. Additionally, I hear stories that the plane didn't actually fly towards Ukraine to kind of unload the supposed prisoners that were on this plane, but it was flying away from the territory of Ukraine, so there was definitely no prisoners. But that's not the point. The story will develop. We're going to find out the truth in certain time. But what is more important is the shitty journalistic principle on display here, because 2.5 well, is it 2 or 3 years now in war? I already lost count. Let's say two. So it's already 2 years of war that we are in, seeing Russia for what it is, a genocidal Nazi state. And what we learned, everyone that is following this, is that when you see Russians opening their mouth and their lips moving, then they are lying. But apparently, it's too much to ask from a Western media to at least consider that potentially the first message coming out from the Russian sources is not really completely true. You know, let's put it nicely here. So, Associated Press here is a complete joke of a source where they are stating about, oh, Russia has a Russian plane with 65 Ukrainian prisoners have been shut down. None of this was confirmed. None of it. It was only stated by the Russian state media and the Western media with no fact checking, no verification, just pick up a narrative and went. I'm not talking about specifically the Associated Press here. What I'm talking about here is A, journalistic standards, and B, can we stop trusting anything Russia that says? Please, it's not that hard. Continue with the AP and their stance on the war and disgrace, and you're welcome to write in the comments everything that you think about AP. Yeah, so Igor Girkin, I'm pretty sure you know this guy. So as AP describes him, a Putin critic, as you can see here. Igor Girkin is not Putin's critic. Igor Girkin, the only thing that he was saying is that Putin was too weak because he killed too few Ukrainians. Igor Girkin has been saying that there should be more genocide against Ukrainians, that Putin should mobilize more, there should be more war. He is not Putin critic. He is not Putin's regime critic. Moreover, specifically when Prigozhin went to try to take down Putin, well, all of that revolted. Igor Girkin was about there trying to gather some people to see if they can prepare so they can defend Putin's regime. He is not as it painted here. That is what we need to know. And Igor Girkin is a convicted war criminal. He is the person responsible for shutting down MH17, the Boeing carrying people from Netherlands to Kuala Lumpur, if I'm remembering correctly. This is the guy. It's the war criminal, convicted war criminal by the European court. There is no dubiousness here. This is not a Putin's critic. And the worst part, you know what's the worst part is here? That they also write about a woman convicted of a blast that killed a pro-Russian blogger. I'm not going to say that it was a pro-Russian blogger because that was also like a propagandist and a war criminal. But they're just like putting in the same sentence the woman that got the longest, I believe, sentence in the Russian court system for a woman. She got, I believe, 24 or 27 years. You can look it up precisely. But the point is that she was actually doing good. She was actually actively doing what I hope Russians would do, to resist, to put their freedom and lives at stake, because otherwise it's only Ukrainians that are sacrificing their lives for the Russians to live better. This war that Russia has started is as much of the Russian opposition, Russian resistance war as it is Ukrainian wars. It's even more, some should say, that it is even more that people, that Russians and people in Russia should resist and put their lives at stake. That woman, what she did, taking out the propagandist, was great. Now, whether she did it knowingly, unknowingly, I don't know. If she did it knowingly, if she actually did it, because I have zero trust to the Russian court system, it could have been anything. She could have been just scapegoated. But if she did know, then this is the heroes that needed to be celebrated separately and loudly, because this is the state of Russian resistance that it needs to be. Instead, we're getting her bunched up in the same sentence with a Putin's critic, the convicted war criminal. Fucking joke this Western media is. And if we're continuing with like kind of narratives, like what would the better look like, right? It's not that hard. And Politico right over here kind of expresses it a lot better. It expresses, yes, Russian plane was fallen, big fireball, yada yada, a lot of unconfirmed claims. There we go. Not so hard. Not so hard. Obviously, not all media in the same way that I don't always get things right. I was wrong on this channel before. I will be wrong on this channel going forward. But I'm not the only one. everyone gets things wrong. For example, the same Politico, if we look at this, yeah, this aged like a glass of good milk. The fact that we were talking around end of November about Johnson being optimistic about the Ukrainian funding bill and the border deal, yeah, now we can throw it all away. And now we go into the bad news for Ukraine, the actual very awful news, not just for Ukraine, actually. It's for the whole world. Because important question that I asked last time was, what does it mean to be an ally of US? What does it mean to be friends in a coalition of these countries that supposedly are protecting democracy? Well, what we see so far is that the biggest player will not even spare the breadcrumbs from the table if there is certain movement that will be against it. That if the conditions are not right, you're screwed. Then there will be no help. Because US has promised we will be with Ukraine for as long as it takes. Those words came out of the president's mouth. Now we can discuss like whether Biden controls this, like whether Republicans control it. I understand this, but you also, and my American friends, need to understand this how this comes out for a public outside of US. And I know there is now apologists saying, oh, it should be Europe that deals with European problems. Oh, we did already so much. That is all a cop-out. That is all trying to say that US is like the same country as any other country, that it's not really based on us. No, guys, that is not true. US is an idea. US is a vision. It's a country that is built on a certain idea what this world should look like, what democracy is in this world. And right now, what is being projected from US is do not trust us. Now, Europeans, I'm really happy that we're starting to kind of realize this. Ukrainians are ultra screwed. But who else is screwed is Taiwan. If I would be Taiwanese, I would be extremely worried right now. Extremely worried. And this is a very, very devastating news because right now, because of the certain political points, it seems that there will be no agreement on Ukraine deal. There will be no agreement on the border deal inside of US. And basically, Ukrainians were going to be paying with their lives. As I said, Ukraine will not lose outright. I don't believe that. But obviously, you need to understand that when Ukraine is going to start losing territory, and it's going to be inevitable because shortage of resources is very obvious. European Union, we are not as militarized. It's the fault of the European Union. It's the fault of Europeans. We know that now. I know that. That's why I bugged and I was shitting on politicians and playing this shame game on our European politicians specifically so we finally wake up. And the waking up is happening, but it's slow, super, super slow, unfortunately. And this means only one thing, that Ukraine is very, very screwed. What we need to understand that it is US that says, for as long as it takes, we're going to be there. And this is going to reinforce Russia. This is going to reinforce Putin, first and foremost, because he's going to see that his gamble is working. That whatever he was planning to, oh, wait a little bit, that democracies are weak, he will think he's right. He will think that he's right. Why wouldn't he? Like, think about this. Why wouldn't he? It's our job right now that I'm really happy that inside Europe we're ringing the bells of potential war. I'm not going to be like a panic driver here or anything, but we need to understand that if democracies are looking weak, if NATO is looking weak, if NATO US will say we're not going to come to our allies to help, then future is going to be extremely unpredictable. I already said that if we were at like a year ago, that if we will not be helping Ukraine like very directly and like fast and firm to win this war, we're going to see erosion of security in the world, and we're going to live every day in a less and less secure world. What we're seeing in news right now, all around us, and what we will see authoritarian regimes in the world do around us is going to start impacting our life. We are going to start losing security more and more and more. World is becoming a dangerous place. And right now, the beacon that was supposed to bring more stability to this world is too busy with itself and their internal politics in an election year. And that is devastating for Europe, democracies as a whole. I want to ask you guys something. So, some time ago, we did a collaboration with Cardinal Birds. Cardinal Birds were really amazing. We wanted to make something special, and they said that they will write a song, essentially, sort of a Ukraine Matters anthem. It ended up being they will just release the song on their own, but I will still use the song. It doesn't really matter, it's all things. But the point is, the band is really needing your help for the song that they want to release. They want you to go to the website that they're sharing. I will put the links in the description. And you need to go, I believe it's on Spotify, and you need to kind of pre-order or pre-listen. I don't know, something like how Spotify works. I don't have Spotify. But please click the link of description. Help get those pre-listens for the song so it gets published on Spotify and the guys are happy with everything. And we're going to see that song popping up already next month. There we go. But Ukraine is not sitting on its hands. Ukraine is continuously striking Russian oil refineries. We talked recently about the strikes on the oil refineries up north near St. Petersburg. Now we're talking about striking them around south, around the Black Sea. Ukraine is not sitting still. And I think that Ukraine is going to be militarizing more and more to try to strike Russian income. I believe it was a little bit of a taboo before because, it would influence the global markets of oil. And I don't think anyone wanted that. But I think now Ukraine is a little bit desperate because the help that they're getting from the world is drying up and they need additional resources to fight. But the good news is that European Union, as I said, they're ramping up stuff. For example, Joseph Borrell came out and said that generally speaking, European Union foreign ministers have agreed to tax the Russian assets that are stored inside of Europe and profits from these taxed assets to be diverted to Ukraine. This is a great addition to supplement Ukrainian fighting. While maybe they will not have the access to full assets, it's great that Russia will start paying for support to Ukraine. And we see many of these messages. All the time I see this. Scholz asking people to support Ukraine more. Germany sending in new helicopters to Ukraine. Well, I mean, they're probably not new, but it's sending to the helicopters to Ukraine. There is positive momentum for Ukraine. It is great. But as I explained, we still need time to build up, and Ukraine needs time to build up. I am stating it's going to be about 2 years, and this is going to be 2 very, very hard years. Especially this year is going to be very difficult. I don't have any good words to say how Ukraine will fare without US aids. The situation is definitely dire. A lot of Ukrainians gonna die. For me, what that means is that I need to be prepared internally to bury more of my friends, potentially family, because they are there on the front line, and it hits very differently when you look at the US internal politics and you look that there is like certain radical groups inside of certain radical parties that are advocating for killing of your family members and your friends, like actively saying more Ukrainians need to die. It's probably easier if it's just Ukrainians like somewhere as a statistic. When you know that it's your friends and family that are there on their line, it just hits a bit different. Thank you so much for watching this, guys. I hope you enjoyed it. Slava Ukraini, and I'll see you next time.